Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second episode of the First to Third podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Swab. We got all my favorite friends back: Drew Dole, Ryan Dole, Scotty Banks, Robbie Swab, and Barrett Clifton. I think this is going to be kind of a weird podcast. There's not really that much going on in the world of baseball right now, so we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about spring training games. I'm in DC. It was a great day outside today, and I was a little bit disappointed that we're not having some spring training baseball coming up soon with the lockout. But we're going to get into all that and much more. So listen in. I want to kick it off by talking a little bit about the lockout, provide some updates, and figure out kind of what's going on. I know that they're discussing some things right now, and objectively. I'll kick it off to whoever wants to kind of jump in, but we're trying to get this thing situated out. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we've got a couple weekends of ball canceled already in the regular season, 2 weekends, I believe that is. And spring training will not start at least for another 2 weeks outside of that. What's everyone's thoughts on where we stand right now with the lockout and how this is kind of proceeding forward as we see it?
Well, I mean, it was a pretty tough week. I think it was Monday night. Baseball Twitter was alive and well till like 2:30 in the morning. Tuesday morning was a rough work morning. Staying up late trying to follow stuff. And then unfortunately we kind of wake up Tuesday, start hearing some news that it was all for naught basically until 2:30 in the morning on Monday, and that was a little frustrating, I think. Just because there was a lot of hope, and I think unfortunately, as the stories came out, it sounded more like the MLB was feeding some reporters some narratives that they wanted pushed, because they got pretty blatantly, I think, backlashed by the players, kind of Tuesday afternoon after the talks broke up and all of that. So, I don't know, man. Like, it was just very frustrating to have some optimism going to bed Monday and then waking up Tuesday and kind of hearing, no, nothing's really changed. And then obviously Manfred canceling the games.
With a smile on his face.
Yeah, that was a very hard podcast, or that was a very hard interview to watch. But yeah, and they had meetings today apparently, and the MLB's come out and said that they feel like the players' proposal went backwards, which I don't even know how those words are even spoken at this point. Other than, again, it's just another narrative trying to be pushed. But from the little research that I was able to kind of put together on Twitter, just to throw some facts out here, I know we want to try to give as specific information as we possibly can. It looks like today the players offered $220 on the CBT, the owners want $220 million on the CBT. The players want $238. So we're at an $18 million difference there. MLB still pushing for 14-team playoff, so 7 from each side. Players, the last I saw, really liked the 12, so 6 from each side. But there were some grumblings that players were willing to move on the 14-team playoff if the first seed got a bye. The first round was a 5-game series, and then if the higher seed got a ghost win, so the higher seed goes into the series up 1-0. MLB apparently has blatantly said that that's not happening. So, that's a fascinating concept, though. Like a ghost win, I don't know how I feel about that either. That one feels kind of strange to me. But yeah. And then apparently the MLB has really started pushing the pace of play narrative. Again, I shouldn't say it's like started, but they've kind of reinstituted that as a big bargaining chip here. I think I saw, I don't want to say who it was because I don't remember who it was and I don't want to be wrong, but somebody on Twitter said that the MLB was trying to push I think it was a 12-second pitch clock, 14-second pitch clock for runners on.
And
19
with runners
19,
on and 14 with nobody on.
Yeah, correct.
Which is crazy.
So is that coming from is that coming from the home plate umpire, and like is there any enforcement of it?
It's the same thing the minor leagues have basically used for the past 5 years almost now.
Yeah, at least the last 4 or 5 years we've used it in the minors, and you never hear anything from the umpires. Like I get to the point where like you don't really even pay attention to it. Like everybody's like pretty much like in a rhythm going like in and out. And then of course like hitter calls time and just get the restart, or you can beat it. It's like if it's winding down, you can just like just step off and it'll restart. So essentially like there's ways around it to beat the clock. So, but I also saw, but when it comes to like the pace of play, it's like if they're so, I saw like I'm not gonna say who tweeted it, but I did read it earlier today. But they talked about like if they're so like honed in on like the pace of play and make a game shorter, then why do like national televised games get even longer commercial breaks than normal? So like you're just killing the place to play already there. So like if you're gonna kill or try to make games shorter, then you got to make national games. You got to make the commercial breaks shorter and make them everything more uniform. Because other than that it just shows you're after the money, and we know that's pretty much what the owners all they're worried about is their bottom line. They could really care less about the rest of it because everybody's paying more to try to watch a game be shorter instead of the opposite, where like we wanted the game to like last longer as kids.
Yeah. So I was about to say, as kids, when we go to the game, extra innings was awesome.
Yeah,
that's more time we got to spend at the ballpark.
Free baseball.
I think so. As somebody that didn't play, but somebody that does like the game a lot, I understand where you're coming from with like, the younger generation, more baseball, the longer the game, the better. But I think the majority of your average fans probably think that the average game is too long. Like it feels too long to devote. And I know I've talked to, some other friends that are, just casual baseball fans, and that always seems to be a topic that gets brought up is, I don't have the time to devote to, a full baseball game. So I've always thought pace of play was kind of interesting because I think the average fan kind of wants something changed in order to speed it up. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if it's a pitch clock or whatever, but I think and again, I might be in the minority here, but I just think I think that is a topic that a lot of people kind of are turned off by.
Yeah. So go ahead, Kenny. Go ahead.
Well, so what I was going to say is, I think you're barking up two separate trees there, because one, as the avid player and fan, shortening the game, there's only a couple ways to do it, right? There's one, you can put a time limit on it, which we've all been there and played in Little League baseball games and played in games where there's a time limit. No one's really going to do that. Or the second option is to potentially shorten the game to 7 innings or 5 innings to make.
All right. So, but before you go on, go back to the clock and just explain to me why that's not a good idea. Like what about it do people not like?
So there's a finite time cap on a 9-inning baseball game. There is a finite solution at some capacity, whether it's 9 innings of baseball being completed, whether it's this, whether it's that. If you start cutting into time and saying, we're only going to allow a game to go 2 hours and 30 minutes. Well,
no. I'm saying that, so not have like a cap on the amount of time it can go. I'm saying just like cutting down again, whether it's using, like baseball and or basketball has like a shot clock, right? Mm-hmm. So, and football has a play clock. So it would be, I guess the idea of cutting down on the dead time in between pitches or something like that, is that, why do people not like that? I guess that's kind of what I was asking.
So I think you're talking, so that was going to be my second point. It was like, you're trying to bark up that tree, and in all actuality, if you really cut it down, so if you had an umpire who was going to sit there with a clock, or another person who's going to sit there in time, 14 seconds, you're not allowed to step off the rubber again, blah, blah, blah. I would venture a guess, and you'd have to put some studies in place to do that, especially in the minor leagues. There's no way you're cutting more than 15 minutes off of a game. And so if you think that, like, if a 3 hour and 30-minute game comes to a 3:15 game, if you can convince me that the average fan is like, oh yeah, hooray, let's do it, that'd be awesome, I'm all for it. But I guarantee you that no average fan is going to say, oh yeah, an extra 15 minutes that I don't have to watch a baseball game is something that I would cheer for. I just don't think cutting off 15 minutes max.
But one thing it might do, especially in this day and age and this generation where we're all pretty much a little ADD and just constantly on your phone and constantly wanting some kind of stimulation, the fact that there would be more sustained action instead of like the longer breaks in between. So I think like somebody that's watching would maybe, you're right, it probably would only cut down, let's say it cut down on 15 minutes. You're right. Most people, that's not a big enough difference to anybody that's going to care about. But it may keep the action flowing a little bit more, which, might keep your attention a little bit better.
So
I think that's the whole part, honestly, is that there's too much time with nothing happening. And that goes a lot to the whole strikeout is the same thing as a regular out. We like home runs, doubles. Well, when you hit home runs, you hit doubles, things like that, it takes longer. It takes a long time. It takes 20 seconds for the guy to round the bases. You strike out a bunch, you don't have anything happening except for the pitcher catching and throwing a ball, and then they throw it around, and there you go again. And I mean, when you're hitting home runs and scoring a bunch of runs, hate to say it, but the game's going to be longer because you've got these runs, you've got pitching changes that are going to happen. That's I think is the big issue with pace of play, is that the fact that the average watcher, the person that just tunes in casually, doesn't see a lot of action happening. Where if you watch the NBA, something's always happening. Football, within 40 seconds, something's going to happen. Hockey, all the time. Even soccer, they got stuff going on all the time. Major League Baseball, catch, throw, catch, throw, catch, throw. Maybe somebody will hit it, maybe somebody not. But it's also the thing that it is the hardest thing to do in sports is to hit a baseball. And that's the other part where your better baseball people know that, it's more of a mind and mental game versus just everything happening at once all the time. But your casual fan wants to see action all the time. And when we've had the most strikeouts in Major League Baseball the last 3 years in a row, I mean, what are we doing? I mean, I know that's what the owners and the agents are. You're getting paid. You get paid to hit home runs, doubles, and knock in runs. Pitchers, you get paid to strike people out.
Yep.
And until that kind of changes, I mean, you don't have people getting paid to steal bases anymore, or people getting paid to hit 350 anymore. You get people to get paid. I mean, Joey Gallo, hit almost right at 200, right at the Mendoza line.
199.
There you go. And he hit 35, 38 home runs and knocked in some odd runs.
He got paid a lot more than Vlad Guerrero Jr. did.
Correct. And who was the better player?
Correct.
Yeah, but not for long. Come on now.
Right. But that's the whole issue, though.
Well,
this is the fan consumption. When you're looking at it on TV, you can't see a 95-mile-an-hour fastball and feel what that looks like. You can't experience that in its most entertaining form. If you're in the building and you see somebody throwing that hard or somebody hitting a ball as hard as they do on a nightly basis, like, that is worth the price of admission. But figuring out how to get that on a TV screen is really, really hard. And it's why they're thinking about backing the mounds up, lowering them, changing the balls every other year. I mean, they are trying like crazy to make it more entertaining for people on TV, because when baseball was first becoming popular, it was an in-person sport, and it has been an in-person sport for a very long time. I mean, even when Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were chasing the home run records, being in those buildings was the big deal.
Yeah. Correct. And so the hard part I have with this is I feel like there's a very big hypocrisy between these two, because what do we want as fans? We want strikeouts. We want homers. We want to lengthen the game because we want to see that. I mean, I'm not, I've been around for watching baseball for 20 plus years. And dude, I can remember when Sosa and McGwire were hitting bombs left and right, and you would wake up the next day wondering how many they hit, when they hit them, how that was all transpiring. But now you're trying to speed up the game, but yet you want to produce all for the fans because we're so ingrained with our phones and these exercises that now I want people to hit home runs. Well, just the logic of that is totally off base.
So let me throw this out, and I literally just thought about this, and I'm sure you guys are going to hate it, but what if we get rid of the home run trot?
Interesting.
In
what way though?
Slow pitch softball. They just gotta go touch first base and go back to the dugout.
Yeah, I mean you hit a bomb. You look at the pitcher, you flick them off, and then you go to the dugout.
So then are you going to get rid of Trevor Bauer doing the
sword?
the McGregor all the way back to the dugout? Like, do we get rid of that too? That I don't know. It's just those are the things that sure. I just think there's a big hypocrisy right now, and that's I think as a I would call myself an avid baseball fan. I feel like that's the big takeaway that I'm taking, not only from just the whole baseball aspect of it, the pace of play, but just in general, everything that's going on right now. There's just a hypocrisy in what is being spread to the fans and what's actually being sold.
Well, I want to jump in on that real quick too, because I think the other point to Barrick's conversation is you're having two different conversations. I personally do not think the length of a major league game is the problem. I just looked it up. In 2021, the average MLB game took 3 hours, 10 minutes, and 7 seconds. In 2021, the average NFL game took 3 hours and 15 minutes. So the average NFL game actually took longer to play than the average MLB game. So the problem people have with Major League Baseball has more to do with that dead time in between the action. So I totally get, I'm all on board for that. And so what I think the conversation should be geared towards is how can we make the broadcast more entertaining? What are some different camera views and camera angles that we can do? And we've seen a little bit of that with this past World Series. And I think maybe even the World Series before that with base cams. And they put that cam in the front of the home plate, that's looking straight up at the batters. I think that's where the Major League Baseball needs to do a better job of investing thought and brainstorming how they can make the broadcast more interesting, not a pace of play issue. Because when you look across the board at other leagues, I don't think the length of the game is the issue. It's, I think, the action of the game that's happening. And so again, it's just fascinating, that conversation, that narrative that baseball takes longer to play than any other sport. And it's just not really true. So that's just kind of my 2 cents. I think we need to change the conversation around that.
But so then where do you go, I guess, would be my question of what do you put in that dead time? Because no offense, you're not going to get these owners to release that dead time back to something that's going to be advantageous for the average fan, right?
Yeah.
That's just
foul ball brought to you by
Well, yeah, I mean,
do a straight summer ball thing, guys.
No free ads. I guess that's my hard. That's the hard that you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right?
Yep.
Where do you go and find that time? What do you do with the dead time? There's just no obvious solution there.
Well, and the other thing with baseball too is think about in a football game. So the average life of a baseball in a baseball game is 2 pitches. Think about after every 2 plays in a football game, they had to run a new football out to the field every single time. That would significantly lengthen the amount of time it took to play an NFL game. So again, I think there's just inherent things that just happen, in a game. So go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
I honestly forgot what I was going to say.
Well, so Scotty, on your point, I mean, no offense, but with my livelihood on the line, I'm taking that into account. You use the football example, I'm not going to replace a football every two plays, but sure, man. If I'm on the mound, and I'm sure Ryan can attest to this, if my livelihood's on the line, I'm going to trade out every ball I can to make sure I have the perfect baseball, or I'm going to not trade one out potentially if it's got the right scuff on it because I want that. You know what I mean? It's just there's things in baseball that I just don't think you can get rid of to gain the average fans appreciation for it, having not played the game or having not being an avid fan, in my opinion.
I guess where I'm just a little frustrated is you have the commissioner and the owners that are basically bad-mouthing the game of baseball for how long it takes to play it. But the length of time it takes to play it isn't any different than any other sport. Like they're bad mouthing their own product. Like, what are we doing? Like,
here's the thing:
there's also 162 games every year. I mean, in the NFL, you get 17. I mean, so the amount of times they have to do that is much different. So
sure.
Well, the other thing is, if they're going to badmouth the product, here's an idea: come up with a solution for it.
Exactly.
If you don't want to lose your money or whatever, come up with a decent solution to eliminate the dead time in between innings, instead of cutting completely away from the game. Watch the pitcher warm up and see what's going on in the ballpark while you have your ads on the other half of the screen. What's it going to matter at that point?
Well, so it's a great point, Drew, because I don't know how much you guys are invested in watching golf, but a lot of times they have a playing through kind of mode, especially NBC does this a lot, which is great. And they'll actually put in the bottom right corner. I don't know, the PIP, people might not picture might not remember this, but yeah, I mean, it's a great feature that I think that they should adopt and adapt to. And that's a great idea for sure.
You know what I think would be, do they have a red zone channel type thing for baseball?
No, but it would be fantastic.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here thinking like that's how you get rid of the downtime, is you just switch between games that, and kind of catch the highlights or the action as it goes. That I mean, to me, that seems like a smart thing to do from, a league standpoint.
Well, so let me
every time Ohtani comes up to bat, it like pans over to the Angels game. Every time Acuna gets on first base, I like that.
That also helps build the actual players' brands too, because again, that the more you see them, the more people are gonna like kind of know those names and get kind of used to it.
And here's the other hard part too, Barrett. Most of the popular like big players right now are on the West Coast.
Yep.
So while the East Coast is sound asleep, you got Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Fernando Tatis Jr., Kershaw when he was with the Dodgers, Seager when he was with the Dodgers, Mad Bum when he was with the Giants. You got this crew in Oakland. Sorry, Ryan, but Chapman, Olsen, that crew right there, Machado. I mean, you got a lot of stars on the West Coast, and that's kind of hurts right now with, especially with us being on the East Coast. I mean, who's staying up till 10 o'clock to watch Monday Night Baseball at 10:30 at night, knowing the game's not going to get over till 2 o'clock in the morning?
Not unless Ryan Dole's in that bullpen.
There you go.
But I was going to say,
Drew just checked us.
So I guess here's my question then, in that like with the scheduling side of things. So if there's a West Coast, Monday Night Football game, it starts like maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock. So why are they starting the West Coast baseball game so late?
Because there's an East Coast game at 7 o'clock already. Mm-hmm. And yes, Kenny, money.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like maybe to kill some of the dead time, like while the commercials are like going on one side and like you're in between it, and it's like why not like have those in game like interviews, have like a player like mic'd up, or have somebody like on the bench or in the bullpen mic'd up, so have a conversation with somebody while that like the in between innings, so you're not being fed commercials all the time. But also like I know it's hard because you need like players to decompress like after games, but like somebody comes after a game, give them like had an inning or so, and then let them maybe talk to and answer questions about like the outing as well, and kind of like beat the media to all their questions as well. Like just give their fans like a little more insight like after an outing, instead of waiting until a couple hours after the game's over to hear from the pitcher. You could like just get something a little bit like more instant feedback, and that could kill some time.
Can you imagine Max Scherzer coming off the mound?
But you also get a lot more emotion and get to see the players like how they actually truly feel after outings, instead of. But I understand from a player's point, like if you just had a terrible outing, like the last thing you want to do is go talk to somebody like a half hour later. You want to like that's the joy of being able to go back to the clubhouse, watch a couple pitches, and then decompress and get your thoughts together before but it's also like you could give the fans what they want to do and hear from them right away.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that Barrick's idea brings up too and fixes, which, I'm going to be a big supporter of, you can't have blackouts on the red zone channel there.
That's the truth.
So 2 birds, 1 stone there, in my opinion, friend.
Yes.
No, I think
what would be cool is if you could set it. Like if you had control over it with players. Like if your favorite player is
your fantasy baseball
Ryan,
lineup
is Ryan Dole. Like every time Ryan Dole comes in, it would tell you.
Yep.
Or you set your fantasy roster on there, and then every time one of your fantasy players came up, or what if he was pitching or whatever.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, you can do that.
I'm honestly
do that in golf.
They don't have this already. Like honestly, it seems like a no-brainer from MLB's standpoint.
But that goes back to them not marketing their players very well.
Yep.
Connected to your online betting.
Yep.
I mean, geez, if you had stuff like that on there, I mean, it's all legal now. That would be awesome if you could have that type of access.
Yeah, so Robbie, this is a great point because this was going to be my next question that I wanted to lead into because I understand growing the game. I understand growing the game, but at what point do we hit this saturation level of that, besides adding in some new feature to baseball, whether it be i.e. betting, like, in-game betting or something along those lines, at what point, I mean, let's be honest, 90, and I may be shooting high here, 98% of people who are watching Major League Baseball really could give 2 craps until September 28th when their team is 1 game out of the playoffs and they really don't care. So in all honesty, games 1 through, I'll call it 2 because a lot of people get up for opening day. From games 2 through 159, there's not that many people who actually care. So why, and to this point, where is the saturation point and why are we kind of trying to feed into those people to get them for games 2 through 159 when it really doesn't matter that much? You know what I mean?
I would argue if it doesn't matter that much, then again that kind of brings up again the conversation of should we just shorten the season because because I think you're right, Kenny. I think there's a lot of people that just kind of tune out for a big chunk of the season until we get towards the end. So that to me that just kind of screams like the people are telling you there's too many games. But I know there's a lot of controversy over that because of records and history and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it kind of seems like the public is kind of answering that question.
Yeah.
Brian's question, because I've never asked this, but is there a reason? I mean, obviously it's because of how many times you have to play a team. Is that the main reason of why there's 162 versus dropping it down to 144, 140, 130, whatever, possibly?
I don't think it has to do with how many times you have to play because the schedule makers would adjust to like make sure you play everybody in your division the same amount of times,
right.
But it would then adjust. You might not be doing a home and home with everybody in like your league, and then it would just affect interleague play a little bit too. So like that's like how all the adjustments would be made. But also like when you talk about shortening the season, yeah, it changes how like records are looked at, but it changes how all of the finances with baseball are changed as well. Like how players are going to probably like they're essentially going to be changed how they're like paid throughout their career and like on a per game basis and like when it comes to like arbitration. So like because then when it comes to arbitration, like you have nothing really to look at. You're going on 162 games, but if you shorten it like to like 144, then you have nothing, no basis. You have to go in and have to fully calculate guys' stats for 144 games instead of like a full season. So it changes the entire process for everything when it comes to shortening the season.
I don't know about the financial side of it, but like, the record book and history side of it, football just expanded to 17 games and there's a lot of people it's just a single, one single game more And there's a lot of talk before the season about how, that was going to, how are we going to measure up? Like Cooper Kupp had a fantastic year, but how is that going to measure up to past seasons? And honestly, it seems like everybody just kind of adjusted and you just kind of, maybe you put that asterisk next to it, say, okay, yeah, it was a 17 game season instead of 16, but it didn't really seem to matter too much. So I feel like if they did shorten the season, I think from a history and record book standpoint, I honestly think people would just get over it after a while.
Well, Major League Baseball used to be a little bit shorter, anyways, right?
156.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Didn't Babe Ruth hit 60 and 156 or a little bit shorter than that? Is that correct?
Yeah,
I think you're right, and I think to Barrett's point, I think you're going to run into that. There's going to be a couple of years of people saying, "Oh, well, if Mike Trout had played in a 162 game season and he only played 144 and he had 60 some odd bombs, he would have passed Barry Bonds."
Bonds, right?
Okay, great. Like that's fantastic, but let's live here and now and figure out what that looks like. And I think you'll face a couple of years of turmoil and uproar, but it's not going to be anything. Going this way, in my opinion, is easier than going the other way. And what I mean by that is if we were at 144 games and we were pushing to 162, I think you run into a lot of people who are going to be upset and say, well, Mike Trout did hit 75 home runs. Barry hit 71 or 70, whatever it was in 144 games. I think this is the easier route to go. However, I feel like we keep coming back to the same theme. No owner wants to subtract a minimum of 3 home games from their payroll or from their revenue, right? And so I just think that it's a sad state that we're in right now, unfortunately, with baseball, and that's very frustrating for me as a one-time player and somebody who really enjoys the game and somebody who really loves the game and wants to see it progress into the way it should go.
Well, the other thing that you have an issue with, I think, if you did go backwards, and that is the mindset of these Hall of Fame voters. Because what you're going to have a hard time with is people that are playing right now that may be like on the cusp of a Hall of Fame career, and now they're for the first half of their career they were already on the cusp, and now for the second half they're only going to get a chance of 144 games, so their stats at that point are not going to really match up of like homers or RBIs or stuff like that. And so we've already seen how stubborn these Hall of Fame voters are. Like all of a sudden now you're going to have guys potentially get snubbed because over the last 5 years of their career, they played 18 less games each of those seasons and missed out on whatever. So it would take a huge overhaul of that Hall of Fame vote, pool as well, because they've already showed how stubborn they're going to be, with the game there, which again, that's a whole other debate for a different day, but
yeah. I did want to talk a little bit briefly about the pre-arbitration bonus pool that seems to be kind of top of the list, especially for some of these players, because I thought it was an interesting point. So I'll briefly explain for our small viewership at this point, but I'll briefly explain what the pre-arbitration bonus is, and then if anybody wants to add anything, and please do, and then we'll kind of discuss it a little bit. But from my knowledge and a little bit of research, the pre-arbitration bonus pool works to pay players who are potentially undervalued for the market that they produce at that specific time. So I think a couple of the names that I saw thrown around this past year and were Vlad Guerrero Jr. I brought him up a little earlier. And then a pitcher from the Brewers, I believe. If anybody knows who I'm talking about, please chime in. But basically, they were very undervalued for
Corbin Burns.
Thank you, Corbin Burns. They were very undervalued for the product that they put on the field, and so I think this pre-arbitration bonus pool would play a significant role in getting them paid earlier based on their market and based on what they produce on the field, rather than having to wait this. And I know we talked about it briefly in a previous episode, but basically getting us to the point where they can be paid for the product they're putting on the field. In my opinion, just to be quite frank, I think that the trend this is going, when you sign directly either out of high school, college, as a free agent, whatever it is, when you have to sign a essentially 6-year, 7-year contract, and you're kind of locked into that before you can get paid, essentially, I think we're in a bad spot. I think, honestly, and let's be frank, if you're coming out of high school, maybe you sign a lengthier contract. But I think these contracts should be based on somewhat age, somewhat where you come out of, but allow these players to be paid and allow these players to receive some sort of compensation for what they're doing. I mean, we've all heard the stories of guys who are very highly touted. They get this great opportunity, but then they flake, or a fluke injury happens before they get drafted, and it's just all downhill from there. So I think where I stand is I would love to see this pool kind of be used, and maybe not to the extent of what maybe the players are looking for, but I think what they're looking for is specific to what's going on now. But if we can change the mold from the front half, I think that's a better solution moving forward, and saying, hey, you're coming out of high school, maybe you sign a 4-year contract with the team you're on. Maybe they'll value you a little bit more. But then, as a college athlete who's coming after their junior year, maybe you only sign a 3-year contract, so you're not locked into that kind of let's call it what it is. This below minimum salary wage that you're required to make, and then serving time based on when you're in the big league. So I don't know what y'all's thoughts are, but I hate it.
I don't like it because it goes back to what Chris Bryant, when they sent him to the minor leagues for 11 days, 12 days. Why? If you're bringing him up, just bring him up. I know it goes all to money, and that's what it is, but that's what this would be for, correct?
Correct.
Doesn't that kind of fall on the agents too? Like, shouldn't the agents be advocating for, their client a little bit better to kind of advise them, hey, don't sign a 7-year contract, like.
Well, that's that's the first contract though.
There's no option.
Draft. Yeah, there's an option.
Yeah, but I think Barrick, I think a little bit to that point, there could be that mold, right? The agents could change that and start saying, like, hey, don't give my client a 7-year deal. Don't give him a 5-year deal if you want to. And I don't know, maybe there's legality behind that or whatever it is. I don't know specifically the details behind that, but yeah, I think it is a little bit on them as well.
Because you talk about, like, we had this conversation a little bit in the last podcast about, how you set the market. Every new contract kind of sets the bar. I feel like this could be the same idea where, if somebody wants to kind of make a stand and say, hey, listen, I'm signing for a max 3 years. That's it. I think that could maybe kind of start the trend. Possibly it could be as easy as that.
Yep.
Make the number of years negotiable, Barrick. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
For a rookie, for somebody who just made their major league debut.
Yeah. I think that would be ideal.
Yeah. Well, that's what the hard part is with, like, what Kenny's talking about with the pre-arbitration, like, bonus that they're talking about is, a player that doesn't get that mega signing bonus because they weren't drafted in the top 1 or 2 rounds, they get drafted, basically probably 10 on, they're not getting much of a signing bonus, and they do eventually make their way through the minors. When they get brought up, they're getting paid league minimum, whatever that number is and is set at, and they're going to make that for the first 3 years they're in the league. Unless they just come out and absolutely kill it and the team decides to give them a contract extension, which they're not going to do because the team controls them for 3 years and can pay them that minimum. And then once they hit that 3-year period, they've got another 3 years of arbitration, which helps them because they can go and pitch, their value and their worth, but they're still going to get capped at some degree. So, that's just what's so difficult was once a player makes that debut, they've got 6 years where an agent, like, the only time an agent can start getting involved really is at that arbitration level.
So let me ask you this: why aren't there more renegotiations happening? Because again, I hear in other sports all the time, like, you have one guy plays has one great year and they're renegotiating the contract. So why isn't that happening more often in baseball?
No salary cap.
Yeah, that's one reason. And two, like, no offense, but if I'm coming to the table as a businessman, I'm not going to pay you. I'm not going to pay you what you're worth. If I'm paying you $700,000 league minimum, I'm not going to offer you $2 million. That's stupid on my part.
Well, that goes back to that whole process of those first 6 years. There is no negotiation.
And then then if I'm a player, I threaten a holdout.
That's fine.
They'll
they
say,
don't
fine,
care.
we'll grab somebody
they'll
else.
go get somebody else.
Yeah.
And then they'll put you on a restricted list, and then you're not getting paid at all.
Yeah.
And I think, Ryan, isn't it like even your first year, even before the pre-arb and the arbitration, doesn't your salary kind of increase just a little bit? I mean,
it doesn't
or supposed to gradually increase.
Supposed to. Most teams give like a little bit, but like they're not required to. But it's your teams that are wanting to like potentially re-sign you and extend you down the road. They're the ones that will try to give you a better like jump in salary going into your arbitration years. But then there are teams that just say we're going to give you maybe like another 1,000. Yeah, you just were like all-star like the year before, but we're not going to give you much of a raise. But like there are teams that do that as well. So it just depends on which team you're on, but it also shows like that's the hardest part is like you are just under their control, and like even if like, and that's where having the options as well is like you could, once you make your debut, it's not just 6 years, like it could be 6+ seasons before you even reach that arbitration point, because they could send you down for X amount of time, you don't get a full year of service time, bring you back up the next year, send you down for a while, you never, then maybe you're only at 1 year service time. Like it could take you like 4 or 5 seasons to reach that 3-year service mark, and by that point, like you're towards the end of your career and you never really got a chance to even negotiate a salary. And at that point, it's like they just controlled your entire career for just being able to go up and down too.
Yeah. So that's just like that, we talked about that a little bit on the first one too, is just like the inherent flaw in how much control a team does have over a player's career, and how a player, like you don't see most players start negotiating a new contract until they're probably 29, 30, unless they are a once in a generation talent like a Mike Trout, Fernando Tatis, like those guys that, Ronald Acuna Jr., these guys that got paid early because the teams see the value. But the other thing about that is, like, you take a Ronald Acuna Jr., for instance, the Braves see that potential and see that talent. They went ahead and locked him up now for, I can't remember the contract off the top of my head. I think it was 10 for 100.
Yeah, it's
a long time.
Years.
Yeah,
that was 8 years.
Yeah.
But I think it's got two. I think it's got it's got 2 team options at the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't tell me that in 7 or 8 years he's going to be worth way more than $100 million. So the Braves see that as an opportunity of, let's go ahead and lock him up at this discounted price now, and he's happy because he's not making that league minimum for the next 3 or 4 years. He's getting paid his money. So that's just, again, it's just so crazy, like just what the process is in general. And I think this CBA negotiation, they're not going to try to attack that as hard. I think they're wanting to make a pretty big dent in some other things. But if I had to guess, that will be something that's hit pretty heavy in the next CBA, is how much control a team has over a player.
And Acuna was 8 years, $100 million.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, so and that's I guess the point of this. We come up with this every 10 years, something like that. The CBA comes up, and I don't know. As a fan, having gone through this a couple of times, I'm just very over it. I understand both sides. I understand wanting to get the best deal for each side, but at some point, like we've got to get back to the mentality of baseball as a game. We want the best. We want the best players to play, and we don't want them sitting out. So if we're really going to take this, I mean, shucks, I don't have a good feeling about this. I have a feeling that we're going to be in a year of like 80 games, potentially maybe 100 games, something along those lines, if we don't figure something out over the next 2 or 3 weeks, because the players don't seem to be budging here. And, I don't fault them for that at all. And, no offense, but Manfred is willing to do what he's willing to do at this point. So,
yep.
I don't know. And it's a little bit frustrating.
Players got a lot of ground to stand on too right here.
Do we want to do another over/under? 147.5 was last week. Our current game.
I know. I can't remember.
Do we want to change the number?
Honestly, who was over? Who was under?
Under.
You
and Ryan were the only 2 overs, I believe.
Me and Ryan
were. That is.
Robbie was an over. So there you go.
Yeah.
We were split, I think.
I know. I kind of went with Ryan. I feel like he had some inside knowledge, but now I backtrack and I feel like I'm going to go with the massive under here. But
well, I think there's a certain amount that the owners know that they have to. There's a certain amount of games that they know they have to play to make sure they can get their full like regional and national media dollars, like revenue. So it's like I don't know if like the players actually know that exact amount, but I think the owners are more just going to maybe you could see them dragging it out to try to get a deal done so they can make sure they reach that number of deals. And if the players ever found out how many games that really is, the players are just going to say, no, we're just going to hang out until you lose your money. Like we're fine losing our money, but we're going to make sure you lose yours as well.
Well, so at this point, what prevents them from doing that anyways, regardless of how many games there are?
I think it's just they just want to play, and they want to like be like the national, like the game. They want to bring and be the show of the summer because essentially like, for most of the summer, like it's just going to be baseball once the NBA finals are over and the Stanley Cup's over. It's like it's just baseball. So like they need to make sure that they steal the show and run with it. Because other than that, then it'll be like a summer, like a sports, like summerless sports, and nobody really going to know what to do. And baseball will kind of probably be forgotten about that point. At that point,
I think you're coming. I think you'll find out what the number of games is when the owners start really pushing the issue more and actually start retracting and getting closer to the players' demands. When that starts happening, that's when you start finding out what the actual number of games is that they're like what their threshold of break even is. Because if they can't break even or gain money, they're going to start pushing the issue and start working their magic with the players because they don't want to lose money. The players just want to play at the end of the day. If they lose money, well, it'll be okay because they just want to play anyways. But the owners don't want to lose any money. Ever.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, and I'll have to go back and do some research on this, but I thought I saw a tweet that went out that said the owners, that regional money that Ryan was talking about for the networks, it was they couldn't miss more than a fourth of the games. So if you put 75% of the 162 season, you're at basically 122 games is like the minimum the teams have to play to meet those regional sports contracts. Now, again, I could have saw that different, but I thought I saw at one point this week in the flurry of all the news that was going on that 25% threshold was thrown out for those regional sports networks. But that would be fascinating.
Is that what you want to set the over under at 121.5?
Hey, man,
I hope it's more than that, but yeah.
Vegas has a good line on that.
That'd be a very, very good line right now. That'd be a tough one to go with too.
Yeah.
Hey man, maybe we can just kick off this in-game betting stuff. We just put this all on the docket. Maybe we should just do this. Put everything on the line. All right, I'm gonna change.
Definitely gonna be. It's gonna be real life replacements. I think they're gonna get replacement players and just play it. Is anybody here the new Shane Falco for baseball?
Yeah, Keanu Reeves is making his baseball career.
I hope they don't do that. But,
or just just show minor league baseball. Show the minor leagues.
More
college baseball. More college baseball.
You're getting more and more college baseball now because of the product of college baseball is a little bit better.
Yeah.
Did you see the Texas LSU game Saturday night? 20,000 fans in Minute Maid Park to watch a college baseball game. Like
the whole lower bowl was full and some of the club level as well.
Yeah, I had a lot of people from work that went to that game.
Nice. Were they cheering for Texas?
Nah, that would be a negative.
Bad day then because Texas put it on them pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna change gears a little bit. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So, I know Ryan mentioned the Stanley Cup and the NBA playoffs. I'm a firm believer.
I have no comment on the NBA playoffs or the Stanley Cup.
Let me finish. All right, so
I'm sorry.
The NBA playoffs and the Stanley Cup playoffs are extremely long and extremely, take a lot of time out of the books. With the new 12 proposed 12-team, 14-team playoff, do you think it waters down the regular season, or do you think it's too much in terms of going to potentially I guess what would that be, like a 5-5, 7-7 series? I know the NBA and the NHL have extremely long postseasons, and I feel like most fans would not want to go to that style. But for me, I would love to see sort of a 140, 150 game season with that 12-team playoff, maybe the top two teams getting a bye first round, similar to kind of how the NFL playoff is done. But I think it could be a good transition into getting the average fan more involved for a lengthier period of time in baseball.
I think the other thing with the NBA and the Stanley Cup, they have days off on home games. Like game 1, for instance, is in LA. Well, game 2 is a day or 2 days later. And then they have another day and another travel day where, Major League Baseball, it's 2 games in a row, 1 travel day, 2 games, 3 games if it's a 7-game series, and then travel day, and then the last 2, or 2, travel day 2, travel day 1. Built in for rain, obviously, as well, and travel. But I think the playoffs could go a little bit quicker with Major League Baseball because you don't have as many off days as the NBA and Stanley Cup do, obviously because of legs and how much they use their legs and everything. And Major League Baseball is played, every day pretty much with minimal off days, right? 10, 12 off days in a 162-game season. So I think it could still go quick, but I think like I said last time, baseball is meant to be played in series. You play whether it's a 3-5, 7-7 or 5-5, 7-7. I think you got to have a series, not just a one-game win and done.
Yeah, I agree with that. The one game is out in my mind.
Yeah.
The series is good. I think it's for me it's kind of simple. I think the more playoff baseball, the better. I think it's exciting. I think it's
the best baseball.
Yeah, it's fun. It's just kind of. Yeah, I think I don't think there's any danger of too much, playoff baseball. I think it'll be a good thing.
Yeah.
So my only hesitation, just given where we currently are, so again, trying to be as factual as I can, I kind of looked it up. So the 2022 season this year is currently set to finish regular season on October the 2nd. And last year, had the Braves-Astros World Series gone to the full Game 7, that game would have been played on Wednesday, November the 3rd. So if we start talking about extending these series and adding these teams, let's just call it an extra week and a half, 2 weeks added to that playoffs. Now we're starting to talk about the World Series happening like the 2nd to possibly 3rd week in November. There are not a lot of teams that play inside. Like, you all of a sudden get the Minnesota Twins in the World Series, and we got snow. You got Philadelphia, New York, Boston, like all these teams all of a sudden. And like, baseball's not a game that does well with elements. So that's my only hesitation is like, if you're not going to shorten the regular season, but you're going to add these teams and add these series, you're going to start bringing in a whole slew of things. Now all of a sudden you get a couple of delays in there. We're going to be playing a World Series game on Thanksgiving Day. Like,
yeah, I agree with you too. I think they can't do both. They got to do one or the other. They got to either, or I guess they're going to have to do both. Sorry, they're going to have to decrease the season, and they're going to have to increase the playoff teams that get in. You can't do one or the other.
Or
I don't think they're talking about doing that though.
You could always potentially like start spring training like how we normally started, like everybody like pitcher and catcher report maybe like beginning of February, shorten the amount of spring training games and start the regular season earlier, say mid-March. That way you push the regular season up and you finish it in like mid-September, and then you can run your playoffs all the way through October. And in that way by the time that comes, you're not battling like the other main sports for like playoff like viewership as well. That might be the only other way to physically do it, to make it like maybe make everybody happy, is like players want a shorter spring training. All right, we'll still start it at the same time, but make it shorter, but start the regular season earlier. And that way we can finish the playoffs maybe by the potential last game on October 31st.
And now you're dealing with the elements on the front side versus the back side, where the back side is the most important part at the end of the day, where the front side,
you can make those games.
You can make those games up. You're not gonna win or lose. I mean, you can technically lose getting to the playoffs in those first couple of weeks, but you can't get into the playoffs those first couple of weeks.
True.
Well, and there are some, especially when it comes to spring training stuff too, though, like indoor facilities to still get that work in if you're having issues with spring training and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I think that I would be down for that part of it. But to the point though, like I think they're not talking about shortening the regular season, and they're talking about extending these playoff teams. So like, you're saying they would have to do both. I don't think that's the current plan. So that's what I'm saying is like, I don't particularly like what's being proposed right now. Because, well, I love baseball, but I'm not trying to watch teams play baseball on November 15th in the snow. Like,
sure.
I mean,
I get that. And I think that's, I can't imagine the players are that stupid and that ignorant to think that they don't want to play in 15-degree weather in Minnesota, potentially if they make the playoffs, or Chicago.
And let's be real. Does baseball really want to go against the NFL like that?
Yeah, not going to happen.
They don't.
They'll lose every time, unfortunately. Cool. There's a couple things more on my list, but I think we've taken about almost an hour of everybody's time. I guess I'll lead with this. Does anyone have any pressing issues they'd love to discuss? We got probably about like 3 or 4 minutes left, and didn't know if anybody had anything that they wanted to discuss.
We might as well discuss this because we all discussed this on text message. So let's get the elephant out of the room. Atlanta Braves free agency. Let's go, Freddie. Come on, Rob. Come on.
Yeah.
Give it to
me. That's the big issue, isn't it? I mean, I know we're all mostly Braves fans. Sorry, Barrick, but
Braves biased.
Yeah, Braves biased. Absolutely, they love us in Atlanta right now.
Yeah. If the Atlanta Braves cannot get Freddie Freeman done, whenever this lockout ends, I will no longer be an Atlanta Braves fan. I cannot stress this enough.
Yikes!
This is
can we write that up?
Wonderful as Acuna is. Freddie Freeman is the dude. He has to be an Atlanta Brave.
Well, can we get that written on the whiteboard, Barrick?
Yeah,
that would
we got it up. We got it up.
That would be the PR disaster of a lifetime. That would be the biggest mistake the Atlanta Braves could make, especially if it's over 1 year, more on a contract, things like that. I mean, they are paying Ozzy Albies and Acuna like cents on the dollar.
Yep.
They should be able to get it done.
Well, Rob, what if it ends up being Freddie's choice? What if he just wants to go somewhere else?
I would still blame the Braves.
Yeah.
I would still blame the Braves because they could have gotten this done in any other part of the season last year. They could have gotten it done.
That's fair, but I also will say, I don't know, man. Pay the guy his money. Let's not be crooks about it. Pay him his money. He's an Atlanta Brave hero and icon. Let's not beat around the bush with this.
I mean, in our lifetime, he's probably the second greatest Brave in our lifetime besides Chipper Jones.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, if he were to come back as a Brave and win potentially another championship,
and
I don't know,
MVP,
man.
And another MVP,
and he might turn himself around and be on the top of that list.
Right.
Yeah, and
his number's already going up there in the Ring of Honor, probably right next to Bobby Cox. Even now,
sure.
Like he could not play another game.
Yeah.
That's fair.
No, this is a conversation topic that Twitter really gets me very upset about.
Because the Dodgers love him.
Well, but also it's just
He's
like even the Braves fans that are out there that are like, oh, he's getting old. Like he got us our World Series. Like, let's let him go. I'm like, you clearly don't understand baseball. and you don't understand like what it means to be the face of a franchise. Like,
you need him in the clubhouse.
Yeah, like he brings so much more than just his play on the field. And sure, the last 2 years of that deal may not be the best production years of Freddie's career, but so what? Like, I'm certainly okay with him being there as a leader. This is exactly what Chipper did for him, like to Drew's point, and to like bring that in. I got into baseball because Chipper Jones played third base for the Atlanta Braves. I switched to first base because Freddie Freeman basically became the new Braves face of the franchise. Like, my career of baseball followed icons basically of this is pretty sweet. So, it's just wild to see that. And who knows who Freddie could mentor to do that next. And I think there's just something about players that can stay in a clubhouse and stay with a franchise and build that next man up, to be that. I think there's some value in that personally. Just that's my opinion.
Well, so I'll directly contradict that. And so I've heard the name Anthony Rizzo being thrown around, and they're literally the same age. So like, what are we doing if we're going out to get somebody? Sure, if you're going to make the argument that I don't want Freddie Freeman because the backside of his contract may be not the production value we want, then you better go out and get somebody who's 24, 25 and put up some freaking unbelievable numbers in the
Matt
majors.
Olson.
Yeah,
I can tell you who.
Matt Olson.
You're just gonna have to trade like that, go deep into your farm system and get a guy like Matt Olson, who's a hometown kid who could be that next guy. But you also have to give up a lot, and who knows, like you could end up giving up more than just like what it would be worth to keep Freddie. Because then you got to think, Matt Olson will be a free agent in 2 years as well, so you're going to have to pay him. And I think he'll probably be about 28, 29 around that point.
Or do you just sign him to a new deal after you trade him?
Yeah, that's also another thing they have to think about.
I think if you're gonna, if the Braves are gonna make a trade for Matt Olson, once you trade him, you might as well go ahead and sign him to a long-term deal.
Yeah,
but you're going to be right back in the same bargaining ship because you
got to get him to agree to it,
right?
Yeah, because he has the leverage at that point. Now he has to go out and play, and he has to continue to put up the numbers, but he has the leverage in that situation. So, I don't know. Just pay Freddie.
I just love Freddie so much. He's so good. Alex and Top, if you listen to this, just get it done, please.
I was gonna say, isn't Freddie more of a proven commodity than Olsen, anyways?
At this point, yes.
At this point in his career, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing to think about too, like the universal DH is going to happen. Like, I don't know if it's going to happen this year, next. Like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it will happen.
This year.
It'll happen by the time Freddie Freeman is at the end of that contract. And Freddie Freeman as a DH, like, sign me up. Like, I'm totally fine with that.
For the last 2 years of his contract, geez Louise, it's no brainer.
So that was Ortiz, right?
Yeah. Even though Ortiz never had the glove Freddie has, let's just make sure that's
close. Not even close.
Also, not the poundage either.
Hey, and that's nothing against Big Papi. I'm a huge fan of Big Papi, but like he doesn't have the gold that Freddie's got over there at first base. That's all I'm saying.
I hear you.
Hey, Ortiz got a jacket now.
He does. Yeah.
Careful with that. That's another discussion that I'll have to have another time. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who weren't here, if you have any questions, comments, concerns about the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. first23rdpod@gmail.com. That's first FIRST 2, the numerical number 2, third THIRD pod@gmail.com. That's a wrap, boys. We'll see you guys next week. Everybody enjoy your weeks and stay safe out there. Cheers.
Peace.
Cue the disco music.
Hey, that was good. We were doing on-air research. How's that for your fact checking?
Yeah, I think we need to reference a research department.
Yeah. Robbie, can you do some research for us, Robbie?
MLB.com. My bibliographic sources are MLB.com.
Yes, I can
Google.
do research.
The bibliotheque. Let me ask you guys this. Thoughts on that one?
Are you still recording?
Well, yeah, but it's going to get edited out anyways.
Good luck, Scotty.
Can you stop recording?